remember buying this little book of how to finish in London, and it would have like, you mix 2 ounces of this and 1 ounce of this and the other, and I thought, my God, this is going to be impossible. And so I was in a hotel, a very basic hotel room, and I was sent some of these materials over from Europe, and I just couldn't make them work. So I said, I went off into town. I went to a local hardware store, which is a very traditional, ones with those sacks, and it had ochres and all the different colors. And I would get some shellac, and I would do this, and I'd buy that, and I'd just get all these different materials and see what I could make of them. And the only thing that I needed to import was the actual gold leaf. So I really, again, through experimentation, I was able to create a lot of finishes. And so that's when really the company Harrison and Guild started. Then you can see there, as little Jepara is the carving capital of Indonesia. Some of you may be familiar with that. And I moved to Semarang. At 1997, Martha wanted to go back to live in Spain, and I still had to think what I was going to do, either to stay or to go back and live in Spain. But Spain was still in recession, so I said, well, I ended up staying and going it alone in Indonesia. I think subsequently Marta, who's still a very wonderful friend, she went on to marry a very handsome Spanish guy, so she got the better deal. So then in Semarang, it was 1998 when I moved into Semarang, and there was a huge recession that hit. It was actually a depression that had hit Indonesia. The rupiah, local currency, was devalued 5-fold. So there was a lot of people that were leaving Indonesia at that time, and I had actually spent some time in Africa when I was 18, 19, and I had gone through a coup d'etat in a place called Guinea Equatorial. So my experiences there stood me well for the experiences that were happening in Indonesia. And so I saw everybody was heading out of town. Well, I thought, let me head back into town. And I remember flying from Singapore back into Indonesia, and I was the only person flying back in because everybody was leaving town. And that gave me an opportunity. It gave me the opportunity to buy land. And so I went on to buy some land in Semarang. And I think that's it. So this is the sketch of the factory that I dreamt of building. So I had the land. It was, I believe, around 15 acres of land. And I had grown up in Spain, as I mentioned. Indonesia is predominantly an Islamic country. So when I was designing the factory, I decided that I wanted something to design something which I would be happy to live in, and that the workforce would be happy to work in. And at the same time would act as a marketing tool as well, so that from the West they would look at that and say, well, I can associate a working or a workshop environment to look like that. So I set out in 1999 to build the facility. I said it was on 15 hectares. So I just built it in a Moorish architecture. For those unfamiliar with Moorish, the Moors were living, the Arabs were living in Spain for a period of 800 years. So when we think of Spanish architecture, it's actually it's got a lot of Islamic influence. So now we tend to associate that with a Mediterranean style. So I went ahead and I started to build this location. It took 300 workers, a period of about 18 months to build. I'll walk you, or you can see a few of the videos as it was being constructed in a little time. But the task was how to make it look old. All of those techniques that I had learned in the workshops in Jepara of how to create color stood me well when I was doing the coloring for the outside of this building. So it also had a lot of luxury. When you get things wrong, it was in a time when the labor and materials were very cheap. So I remember building that tower once and said, no, it doesn't look right. We knocked it down again and we built it up again. And so there was I don't think you could do that today. It's just a lot more expensive. So this is during the construction phase. So it looks pretty dull and boring there. But I think, Roger, this must bring memories of when you were building wind. Yes, that's true. Yes. So we're going to go on to the video now, and I'll show you a little bit of the video. When I was designing the factory, I said, well, I don't want to design a factory, we're going to design something which is special. I wanted to build something in which was a pleasure to work in. the workshops used to be rice fields. Everything that you see there has grown over the last 8 years. I lived in Spain. I was born in Britain, but I lived in Spain for the early part of my life, and so I had a lot of Spanish influence. And in this particular building, I decided to build it all in a Moorish style because of a Spanish heritage which could relate to the local culture here, but also to my roots. A lot of the finishing on the walls are techniques that were used within production. We have a balcony which would fit very well in Verona, such as like the Romeo and Juliet balcony. This is like a secret little garden. The Buddha, the statue that we see there, that actually came from Borobudur. It weighs 4 tons, so to move it from where we did to get it here was quite an effort. The doors that you see over there, they were donated by a very good friend from Paris, and they actually had originated from Chateau Lafite. What we are building here was something which you come in here every time and you think, wow, I'm so lucky, to be doing this. A little oasis. The surroundings were really part of the philosophy, serenity. I didn't show you any of the inside of the factory. Actually, those who was interested to see the inside of the factory, there's another video on our website that shows that. But it was a lot of pleasure. I think when I came in from Europe, I always thought I knew everything. Then I came to America one day, and I thought, well, I've just learnt another 50% of what I thought I knew. Then I went to Asia. Then it started dividing into clear thirds. So I've learnt. It's been a pleasure to work in Indonesia. It hasn't been easy. It's sometimes you can get frustrated a little bit at how to manage these businesses over there. And one day I was in McDonald's, of all places, in Indonesia, and I was sitting down after having a very frustrating day, and I was sat down and I was watching them serving dishing up their McDonald's, and I was sat down. Then I said, "Do you realize something? Do you realize how fast they serve those McDonald's up?" Well, I've been in Tokyo, London, Madrid, and they're serving them up in the same time. So what does that mean? It's all how systems work. So if you have a good system, it doesn't matter where you work, the workforce will follow that system and be happy to do so. So that inspired me. So to get that system, we found that it wasn't good enough just to be in manufacturing. I was designing and I was manufacturing, but we had to take things to another step. The other step was in 2005, I decided to change the name of the company from Harrison & Gill, and it was also known here as Dolphin Mirror Company, and I changed it to Christopher Guy, so my full name being Christopher Guy Harrison. Reason for that was that we had a number of distributors around the world, and we had to create a branding. And a lot of distributors may have gone shot off in different directions, and they had shot off too far in different directions really to bring it back. So one day, I don't know how it happened, but I frightened everybody. One day I said, "Guys, we're changing the name of the company. It's now going to be Christopher Guy." I said, "What are you doing? You can't do that." So after having a name of the company for about 10 years at that point. And also for Christopher Guy, it needed to evolve. It needed to evolve into furnishings. And so that's what happened in 2005, and we took over the US distributorship at that point, because we needed to move up from manufacturing to distribution. And then from there we've been for building up the collection. So Christopher Guy has been evolving into more furnishings. I mean, I'm sure many of you may not even realize that we actually started as a mirror company. And so really that started from 2006, and now it's 5 years on. Then the manufacturing distributionship wasn't enough. We had to take it on a global basis. So these are the things that are becoming very interesting with the business. We couldn't remain in just one location. We had to spread our wings. So again, luckily, I actually live in Singapore. Singapore is the Switzerland of Asia, as they like to call it over there. It's only about 5 million people live there. It's an ex-British colony. The nice thing about it is the mother tongues are both, it's a dual, it's English and Chinese. So it's ideally located, and it's just an hour-and-a-half flight away from my facilities in Java. So I set out in Singapore to put structure and organization into the company. Today we have a team of 60 people in Singapore, and they manage the various businesses. So we have unite as blocks, you say the Americas, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And that's been very useful, especially these last 2 years, because I know a lot of you here have actually experienced a recession. And I can see it and I can feel it, and I've been through a number of recessions in my life. But in our case, it was very fortunate that we had married up with the Middle East and Asia. So actually, our sales have gone up in the last 2 years. Have almost gone up to over 70% and almost 80% in these last 2 years. But we also managed to increase our market share in the United States. So why? Why did that happen? Well, you have to have salespeople on the ground in each of those countries. You have to have an infrastructure, distribution systems in each of those countries. You have to build brand awareness. And so how have I been trying to build brand awareness? Well, I've always been fascinated, again, by the brands like LVMH, Chanel, which is my favorite, I guess, and Dior. And I love to go into their stores, and I just love to see how they decorate their stores and how the feeling that they put together. And what they have is still simplicity, especially for Chanel. But it's elegant, and there wasn't a thing out of place. There wasn't a light out of place. There wasn't a scratch on the wall. And that is something I would dreamt of making. They have great names. You can never forget that if you look at the most successful companies in our industry, in the fashion industry, it tends to be a great name in the high end. They're lucky enough to have Chanel as a beautiful name, Louis Vuitton, Valentino. There are great names, and it's difficult to create a new name. I don't think you can ever create another name like those kind of names. They're special. They also have great monograms. So the monograms that they have, as you can see here, LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, you could have a team working on such things for a year, and I don't think you could come up with better names or better monograms. So they're there. And so what I was trying to do is say, well, how do I create my own monogram, and how do I create, well, Christopher Guy is not a Chanel, but it sounds okay in many languages except Chinese, who they can't pronounce it. So over there actually it's called CG, and actually CG is a kind of CG, I can't actually pronounce it, but it means lion or something over there, so I'm lucky as well. And then we came on to the Christopher Guy, the monogram that was created there. So where am I? So where is the company today? And what have we achieved? I always feel very, very proud, and I look at this award, and I look at the award, I'm so proud of we have 1,400 craftsmen that work under our roof, and we have over 150 staff worldwide out of the other company. It's a real pleasure to be working with them, because I know nothing would be possible without them. I may be the driving force with these foolish ideas that I get every now and again, but I feel very humbled next to them, and it's a great pleasure. So if any of you wanted to go and see workshops in Indonesia to see how they work, you'll be my guest, to come down there. So where does that leave us? So we feel that, okay, the product went from mirrors and it expanded into a wide range of furnishings. And when you start expanding,